Hey, well, I'm hiking one of my favorite short hikes. You can make it a long hike, but I like to come to right about here. Usually, almost always, I see some deer, but not today. And I haven't been able to hike this much in a while because I've been trying to let my knees heal. I have, I guess, what's called runner's knee, and a lot of stretching and exercising. But the biggest thing has been strength training in the gym to get rid of that, and it's a lot better. Still gotta be careful, and I gotta keep working on it. But and also, if you tried to hike this and you hear there might be thunder in the background, that's also this time of year, late in the afternoon, there's always a lot of thunderstorms, so that stopped me a couple of times too. But it's so nice to be up here, and I want to make a point about inspiration and a particular artist. So I got to see this musician. Her name's Valerie June. Got to see her a week ago at the folk festival, and her music is extremely inspirational and extremely deep and very enjoyable to listen to also. And so I wanted to encourage you to listen to Valerie June's music. It's in other people's music that is like that, and other art and poetry and things of that nature, but her music is it's very much focused on really being soulful, but really being a little deeper than just fun music. It's actually it's almost like therapy. It is therapy. Music is therapy because there's not only lyrics if they're well written, but there's also what the music does for our brain and our neurological system. I also wanted to make another point, and this doesn't really have much to do with the music, but it's just something that's on my mind because little kids, it's hard to explain some of these things to children, but you kind of need to, but certain people do need to hear it because it affects your life, and it'll certainly affect everybody's life at some point. And one of those things I was thinking about is you got to be careful about how other people influence other people. There's a term for it, actually. If you think about what a triangle is, right? There's 3 points in a triangle. And sometimes we use this term triangulation as part of geometry. So if you know 2 points, you can figure out the distance to the third point if you know the angles of 2 points. There's a geometric principle called triangulation. That term also gets used with people. And some people just have stuff going on in their heads that make them unable to work through a situation rationally, so they use manipulation, and every human being has some aspect of this. It's kind of just built into our survival, but there's a certain group of people who will take these things to very much to an extreme, well beyond normal, and to where it becomes very hurtful to everybody involved, and ultimately usually to themselves as well. But it's when a person, you need to know about this, but you don't want to use it. The knowledge is about protecting yourself and being aware. It's not about using it, against people. But a lot of times a person will take another person or multiple other people that have influence on a third person. And so person A will do things to scare, manipulate, influence person B, who then unwittingly influences person C. So person A has learned this art of controlling person B, knowing that has an influence on person C. And usually that person B is a friend or a family member or somebody that person C trusts and loves and cares about. And person A has learned this skill of manipulating that person. And a lot of times it will hurt that person just to hurt the other person. So in other words, they'll actually do bad things mentally and even physically and financially to person B just to get to person C. And a lot of these things are unfortunately sort of not, they're sort of developmental things. They're things that person A may not have really even seen themselves becoming because of the nature of other things that happen to them. It's all a very complicated thing, and that's why the golden rule is so important. And that's why the best way to love yourself is to love God. God synonymous with good. And it's also the best way to be able to learn to love other people, but at the same time, in a positive way, in a way in which you love them as part of humanity or part of whatever, but you don't necessarily, just accept anything that they do. You don't just accept all of their actions, and you're able to, stand up against them. These things also happen. Sometimes it's with a person's just the way the person generally is, but also a lot of times when people become dependent on substances, drugs and alcohol and those sorts of things, they develop these bad characteristics, and they will use things like triangulation and that sort of thing, because the whatever it is, it can be other things. It doesn't have to be a substance. It can be just other things that people become dependent on. They hurt that person's ability to rationally think and to use their mind correctly, so the person falls back on trickery and these manipulative types of tactics. So that's a deep subject for a young person to hear, but I think you need to hear that, and you can study that. Don't just stop right here, because it's a very complicated kind of subject. So don't get overly caught up in it. Just know that it exists, and then as you get older, and as you can study it and kind of evaluate it, and get a better understanding of what I'm talking about. But there's a reason for why I think it's important that you hear that. So, but listen to inspirational things. Always set your compass right. Try to be around people who have good intentions, and learn that the world's not a perfect place, and no human being, not me, not anybody else, is a perfect person. So we're all kind of learning to love one another, and as best that we can in the situations where you have to, you have to draw the line with certain things, and do your best, and do your best. You're such a wonderful little person, and you're growing up to be a wonderful big person. So I love you.